And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our weekly Learning Your Lunchtime Friday afternoon webinar. It's absolutely great to be here with you this afternoon. It's kind of like our team meeting for the Student Success Coach members only Facebook group, and I'll put the link in the chat for you guys to join in there and just get fantastic access to lots of your colleagues, everyone else also studying, and we've got mentors in the group there as well. I'll give you a little bit of an update on our group a little bit later on in the webinar. But just a very warm welcome to everybody joining us this afternoon. Hope you're all well and have had a good week. I had a couple of coaching calls with people in the last couple of weeks, and as I always mention, I am available if you need to chat. Please just do get hold of me in the Facebook group, and we'll swap numbers and be in touch. So I'll do that for free, half an hour. Very happy to help you and give any insights that I can. So yes, please do say hi in the chat. Hello, Melissa. How are you? Great to have you here. University of Pretoria, always very faithful and very supportive university. We often always have Takkies with us, as well as Wits and Nelson Mandela and Cape Town, Durban, Stellenbosch, Paka. So please just do mention which university you guys are from. And then as we're talking about learning writing skills today, we're going to get straight into that. You guys are going to get lots of value from today's session. Then I'll provide free access into a couple of courses where you'll be able to pick up a lot more skills about writing. And this is just such a common topic that I think students are struggling with. So please do ask specific questions in the chat, and then we can deal with those. And just let us know where you are coming from in terms of your university, what you'd like to learn about today in terms of writing. And we'll get into the presentation as soon as possible. So, once again, if you are joining us a little bit late this afternoon, very warm welcome to you. We've had a couple of really good guests in the last couple of weeks, and I thought, well, let's just do a coaching session today. We've got a session on mentorship next week with Clive Butkow. I'll be talking a little bit about that just now, as well as the progress on mentorship in our group, which is really going absolutely fantastically well. We've got a number of mentors signed up. And again, mentorship is just something that, everybody needs to get a little bit of help along the way. And through the members-only Facebook group of the Student Success Coach, we've actually created a mentorship program for people to sign up and become mentors, and then for you, obviously, to get a mentor as well. So Lucy, Mabuza, Robert, Paul, fantastic to have you guys. Kobedi, Pandile, I know a couple of people have got lectures and tests, but those of you that are available, great that you've been able to join us. It's learning your lunchtime, so I hope you've got something to eat and snack as we get into just learning writing skills. Now, just a little bit of background to some of the content that I'll be presenting today. I developed this over about 5 years, actually, of presenting writing workshops at Wits to the postgraduate community there. Wits actually went on, took that material, partnered with a couple of other lecturers there, and we've got a full-blown, I think almost 2-hour-long course available on edX, which goes into a lot more detail. So I can provide that access to you as well. But what you'll get today is, really a lot of value and practical principles and techniques that you can apply this afternoon. You can take action. You can go back into your writing. You can look at what you've written. You become your own editor. And, we all know the anxiety of handing in work to our supervisors, sending it off to examiners. And that's going to be a part of your journey as a student. Is writing projects, writing up research, sending in final reports. And we had Gabby on previously. We've had a couple of other people talking about writing, and I've just picked up really great nuggets from all of these wonderful people. And over all of those discussions, I think the most important thing, and what I've spoken to many students about over the years, is that you have to build up writing confidence. You have to get good at writing. There's actually no shortcut, and especially if English is not your first language. It can be tough, but the more you spend time on it, the more you come into these types of sessions, the more you take courses to help yourself, just the better and better you'll get at writing, which I think is just so important for you as a student going through your student journey. So great to have Marvelous, Lorato, Jolene, Jeanette. Fantastic that you guys are here. Yusuf, just double check you can hear me and see everything. Think everything is working today, which is fantastic. Arita, hello, welcome to you. Absolutely very loyal and consistent supporter over many years. Great to have you. And Aretha, probably you were even in one of my Wits workshops many, many years ago. If anybody has been in one of my Wits workshops, we used to have it in that library there, the William Cullen Library there next to the Wits Great Hall. It'd be great just to see if anybody on the webinar today was ever in one of those sessions. It would be really great. So good sound and everything on point. Thank you, fantastic Maureen. Okay, great. So we're going to get into the reason you guys are here is obviously to learn writing skills. And I need to see writing questions from you guys now. So what questions specifically do you have about writing? So we can answer those specifically and we can help people today in the session. Obviously, I'll give you access to the course material. In fact, there'll be 2 courses today. The writing course, W Academic Writing Quality, and then the broader Student Success Masterclass, within which there's sort of, writing as key steps on that journey, as well as lots of other value to give you the confidence and to, get your degree and be successful as a student, which is really what we're all about here on the Student Success Coach. All right, so I think, we all know the challenges that we have as students. We go into university and we have this, wonderful expectation of, getting our degree and doing this wonderful research. And then we suddenly realize that actually, the success of this degree and the success of my contribution to, my field is really going to depend to a large extent on how well I can write about the research that I'm doing, how well I can write a proposal. One of the members of our Student Success Coach community was actually doing her proposal presentation today. I was coaching her during the week and we had to look through her slides. And again, writing, whether it's on slides or whether it's in reports or whether it's in documents or anything else, is just so fundamental to your journey. And I really want you guys to, get confident and become good writers, because as you can see there, at the end of the day, you're going to hand in this report, especially if it's at a postgraduate level, and you're working towards that final outcome. And I always coach my students, think with that end point in mind. And even when you're writing a proposal, think about what you can reuse to get into that final report, and all the steps that you take along the way is going to be judged on how well you've written that final report. So let's just pick up a couple of questions as we go. Pambile, mental block, how do you overcome it? So I'm assuming mental block relating to writing. And the most important thing, even if you don't know what to write, you start writing. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. The reason you're not writing because you've got a mental block is because you haven't started writing. So you have to see it completely in reverse. Your mind cannot physically write anything. Only your hands can write something or type on a keyboard. So until you actually start writing, you haven't unlocked the link between your brain and your fingers. You cannot store an entire final report or thesis in your brain. That's not how it works. You have to get some of that down on paper. As you start getting that down on paper, it improves the way you think. And in the Student Success Masterclass, I talk about reading, writing, and thinking. And so your question is bang on, because thinking is so much a part of writing, and yet we don't link the two. So Pambile, number one, start writing even before you know what you need to write. And I guarantee you that every single sentence you write in your final report is not going to be the original version of it. You will never have a sentence in your mind that ends up in the same state in your final report. You're going to edit it, you're going to change it, and what you're going to learn today is techniques for moving things around in sentences to make your writing even better. So to overcome the mental block, start writing, and so you start writing, I don't know what to write, and then slowly but surely those thoughts will start coming through. And if you could think about that as generative writing, now you start thinking, okay, well, I can write this down, I can write that down, it's related to a topic, it's related to proposal. And then, Pambile, you're starting to get words on a page. And at least you've overcome that initial mental block of actually not having words on a page. And writer's block, where you've just got that blinking cursor there, is something that can be quite scary. And that's the only way to overcome it, is just write. I don't know what to write. And then it'll start flowing from your brain. And then in your generative writing process, you do start trying to get something down on paper that's related to your topic. And then, Pambile, what I would suggest you do is you get into a habit of writing, 100 words, 200 words, or even just 45 minutes every single day. My pattern in my life was always that, when we were going into the office, I would stop off at a coffee shop and I would be writing there for just 45 minutes before work every day. And that over time really became my final report. My thesis, really, I can tell you now, was largely written in coffee shops, and in the 10, 15, 20 minutes that I was able to snatch here and there. So Pampila, hopefully that is useful thoughts for you there. Maureen, I've been told my writing is too scientific. Is there even such? I was so confused. Maureen, yes, there is. We're going to deal with that topic in this webinar, and I'll teach you how you must put complex topics at the end of your sentences. And what you're probably finding is that, and as students, we're quite passionate about our material, and we're also really wanting to show our supervisors and our examiners, that we know this material, that we're making a contribution, and so we tend to, add the jargon and the definitions and so on into the writing. But we forget that our reader, even though they're an expert in that field, they're reading a lot of reports, they need to know a lot of terms, they don't know all the specifics of the things that you're talking about. So we'll get to the practice just now of putting complex topics and definitions and scientific elements of your writing at the end of your sentences. You have to have some degree of scientific content in your writing, because at a postgraduate level, it's complex, it's important, it's dealing with complex things, but there's a way of writing about it that for your reader doesn't make them feel like this is scientific. You've got to be telling a story, you've got to be taking them on a journey, you've got to get your reader all the way through from your title and your abstract and your table of contents all the way through to the last page of your last appendix of your 200-page final report. Now, if they're feeling that writing is too dense and scientific, they're going to struggle to get through it. Because I tell you what, just like that guy there on the slide is handing in a pile of papers, that professor there, back on his desk, he's got an even bigger pile of papers of all the student writing that he has to mark. So you have to be very sensitive to your reader as well. But we'll give you some good insights to help you with that, during this webinar. Okay. Now, very importantly, we all come from different faculties, and I think it is important to recognize that, in the different faculties, there are different conventions for how we write. There are different ways of doing referencing. There's different styles, if you like. A medical journal article is going to look very different and feel very different and have very different topics and subjects and issues to deal with than an engineering or a commerce, law, and management journal article, for example. So just recognize that within your own faculties, you are going to be, influenced and expected to, stick with those conventions and be aware of how people in those faculties and in those areas are already writing. But having said that, what we'll teach you in the webinar today and what I teach in all my courses is independent of faculties. Other than the referencing, where I teach about specific referencing styles that might be used for specific faculties, the writing practices and techniques that I give you and teach you and that you can use to improve your writing are independent of faculties. Okay, I think there was one or two questions here. The first one was, Lorato, I struggle with wrapping up my ideas, tips on writing a good conclusion. So you've got I think, every paragraph almost needs to have a little ending as well. And, this is just related to the previous topic. We often don't conclude each paragraph. So what happens is your reader never really gets to the end or sees a logical stepping stone from one paragraph to the next. And if you don't have mini conclusions all the way through your writing, then there's going to be this massive conclusion at the end of either a section or the end of the whole final report, where you haven't given your reader a chance to just take a break and conclude on thoughts and topics as you go. So, Lorato, the fact that you struggle with wrapping up ideas is something that I think you should apply in paragraphs, in sections, and then at the end of your final report. And what that'll do is, as a tip, it'll help you then go back to each of those little conclusions and then use those to bring your large conclusion together. And, if I think about the conclusion of a literature review section of your final report, for example, that's really going to summarize, your approach to the literature. It's going to summarize the different questions that you asked, the gap in the literature. The conclusion of a methodology section might be a little bit more of a summary. The conclusion of a results section, might start talking about the interpretation of those results, because a conclusion of a section is also going to lead into the next section. So you've got to look at the conclusion in the context of where it is that you're writing that conclusion. Okay, Salam Awet, I absolutely, and this is why I'm so passionate about this, English is not my first language. When my mind is busy looking for proper words, I get lost on the topic. Right, so you have teed up the next slide, because the problem is that we write about complex ideas. So we use complex writing. And we think that a complex style implies some sort of academic excellence. And we often try to copy the style of writing that we see in journals by very experienced and senior professors, for example. And that compounds this problem of, language being your second language. And it really affects, and I've seen it so many times with so many students, it affects their motivation, it affects their confidence with their writing. And what I want to enforce with you guys today is that you have to write in plain English. And I'll give you some practical tips and ways of doing that just now. Don't think that you have to write in complex academic prose and therefore are looking for difficult English words. Start by putting down the simplest version of the English words that is going to convey the meaning across to the reader. And Salam Awet, we're again going to come back to that and give you a sense of how you can improve your writing from that perspective. Okay, so let's get into then some of the actual teaching, and I think this will start to help you if you've had some specific questions. And really there's 4 specific practices that I'm going to help you with in this webinar. And the first one is to make sure that your subject is a clear doer or actor in the story. And we learned this in school, or it's basic sort of English grammar sentence structure, that a subject of a sentence must be a person, a place, or an object. And what we see in those 2 sentences is 2 different examples of that. The first one was it puts the subject of the sentence as a person. So they're writing about Locke, who was obviously an English literature expert, and they say that Locke frequently repeated himself because he did not trust the power of words, etc. So Locke is the subject, and you can see that in the first sentence, it's a clear doer or actor in the story. And as I said, you are always telling a story in what you're doing and in what you're writing. And once again, just make sure that the subjects, and remember, the subject does the action in the sentence. So when you are writing, and as I said earlier, you need to be your own editor, have a look at what is the subject of my sentence and how am I making this as clear as possible. Because if you use an abstract subject, like in that second sentence there, which the second sentence says exactly the same thing as the first sentence, but it's a lot more convoluted and it's a lot more complex. And if you try and write like that, as to the comment that was just made from one of the people in the webinar, you're going to be looking for more words than you need to. So why make your life hard? Keep your subjects as simple and as practical as possible. You will convey the same meaning, but you'll use less words, and your writing will be clearer, and it'll have a greater degree of clarity in it. So that's the first tip there. And I just want to see here, Kobedi says, I struggle with putting my points concisely without drifting away from the main issue and still coherent and logical flow of thought. So Kobedi, tip number 1, make sure your subject is a clear doer of the action. We're going to talk about verbs and actions just now, and it's very easy to make this mistake. When you talk about something that is abstract, you bring in extra words, you bring in pronouns, you bring in prepositions, and you can see there in that second sentence, the subject of that sentence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. So that sentence there is difficult to understand. And if you're reading a lot of sentences over a final report, of 30, 40,000 words, the ability for you to stay coherent and have a logical flow of thoughts, you're really going to struggle. So Kobedi, first learning that you hopefully have from today's webinar is this point around the subjects there. Okay. Lesejo says, I'm struggling with writing the background of my study, but I somehow have put a literature review together. Okay, so Lesejo, there is a video on the YouTube channel about writing literature reviews and how you can approach the different elements that go into a literature review, and that includes the background of the study. And I'll pop a link to that video in the chat a little bit later. But if you subscribe into the YouTube channel, you'll be able to pick that up quite easily. And I'll just make sure that everybody's got the access to that, the link that you need to go and click on to be able to subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can get that video. And obviously this one and all the other content that I create and make available for you. And included in there, Lesejo, is proposals and literature reviews, both in your final report and at the beginning of your study when you need to do an initial literature review. And even in the Student Success Masterclass course, which I will provide you today for free, there is a section in that course that helps you to write a proposal and to get the background right. So Lesejo, hopefully you'll be able to hop in there and get some value from that. Okay, then another example when we look at subjects and characters is as follows over here. And you can see there that the subject in the second sentence is actually an obscure action, but the subjects in sentence number one are clear and concise. So you absolutely need to be your own editor. You need to be looking at your subjects and saying, is my subject clear, or have I turned my subject around and made it more abstract such that it adds words into my sentence? And one of the most important things that people struggle with in writing is too many words in a sentence. Sentences are too long, too convoluted, and you struggle to maintain the logical flow and the coherency and the clarity of your writing. So keep your subjects absolutely clear, and if you cannot put the subject down in 2 or 3 words, then most probably you've fallen into the same trap here, where your subjects are obscure and abstract, and you need to make them much more clear and concise. So when it's a tangible, person, thing, place, a rainforest, the Earth's biosphere, Locke as a person on the previous slide, those are clear subjects, and we're able to convey meaning with clear subjects a lot easier. Okay, hopefully that's useful. Let's just keep going. Readers will judge your sentences to be clear and readable to the degree that you make their subjects name the main characters in your story. When you do this, your subjects will be short, specific, and concrete, and that's just going to help make you a better writer, make you come across clearer, and help you to retain the meaning and the flow of what it is that you're putting down on paper and submitting into your supervisor, your examiner. Yeah, Joyce, great to have you on board. Had lots of people joining into the Facebook group this week to get access into the webinar this afternoon. Ze Suliwe from University of Pretoria. I was told that when writing essays, even if it's a small passage, I drift away from main topics and end up writing unnecessary information. Any tips on how I can stay on point? Well, exactly what we've been talking about. The way that you can stay on point is to make sure that your subject is a clear person, place, or thing, and that you write about that subject in as few words as possible. And that's how you'll be able to stay on point. And then we're going to go into a couple of other practices shortly that'll help you in the flow of your writing to continue with that golden thread of what it is that you're communicating to your reader. And all of these are very important points here. Cindy, sorry to change gears, absolutely fine. This is like our team meeting for the week, so we can jump around as we want to. Sorry to change gears, but I need assistance with the following. I decided to use some material for my honors thesis for my master's literature review. How can I protect myself from plagiarism? Cindy, if you wrote that, if that was your own original writing, you may have referenced or cited some other sources, then absolutely you can bring it into your literature review. That's absolutely no problem at all. Obviously, it just needs to be relevant to your study. The issue with the reuse of honors and masters into a PhD is whether or not the results, have already been examined or published in some way. You cannot then reuse those results and findings as original results and findings in a subsequent study. Okay, what often happens is someone will do a master's and realize that they want to continue on with that research. Then they need to bind that master's into a full-blown PhD, and often universities will give you approval to do that if you've done a master's level amount of work in the research. And that's where the challenge comes from. As for plagiarism, you cannot plagiarize yourself. So a quick true story, when I submitted my final report to a system called Turnitin, which Wits uses to check for plagiarism, and plagiarism, they'll allow you about a 5, 6, 7% of plagiarism, because often you inadvertently plagiarize other works simply because you're combining words in unique ways that have been used like that elsewhere. And true story, mine came back with some plagiarism, and I looked in the report, and when I went down to go and look at who apparently I was plagiarizing, it said I was plagiarizing a website called peteralchemy.com. And what it turned out was that the AI in the plagiarism system had picked up a similar style of writing. It was on different topics, of course. I hadn't copied in those exact words, but my sentence construction and style and approach was just so similar because it was my own writing. So Cindy, in your honors thesis writing, bringing that into your master's literature review is absolutely not going to be a problem. I would just suggest, and I would challenge you, that as you move up the ladder in terms of your academic journey, you should be getting better and better at writing. You should be becoming a more and more advanced and capable student. And often when I look back at older writings of mine, I see that amateurish sort of or early stage, skills coming through. So I would just, look at how you can improve and upgrade your writing. But what I think you're getting at here is that you've got some reusable raw material, and then from that you can just slightly improve that and take some of the principles and tips and tricks that I'm giving you today and that I'll teach you shortly, where in a sentence you just swap things around in a sentence and it flows better, it's more coherent, it's more meaningful, and you are more respectful and understanding of your reader trying to interpret your work. But that raw material is there, as you say, in your honors thesis. And of course, going to a master's level, you're going to be expected to do a bigger literature review. It can't only be what you had in your honors thesis, but you can most certainly, chop and change and reuse as you do. And Cindy, an example that I constantly use is that in your proposal literature review, a lot of that you can reuse in your final report, for example. Okay, hopefully all that is useful. Thanks for changing gears there. That was fantastic. Okay, now this is a very important one. When you write about action in a sentence, and when you're telling a story, and pretty much anything that you write about, even if it's academically, we're not writing fiction. Okay, we're writing about research and results and so on. There's going to be action in your sentences, and action can be expressed as either a verb or as a noun. Now that might not be intuitive, but what happens is we nominalize verbs, right? So let's look again at these two sentences here. In the first sentence, it says that Locke frequently repeated himself because he did not trust the power of words to name things accurately. Okay. Now, repeated is obviously the past tense of the verb repeat. It's an action. So is trust and name. But if you look in the second sentence, those verbs have been nominalized. They've been expressed not as verbs, but as nouns. So repetition is the noun form of the verb repeat. Naming is the noun form of name, okay? And this creeps in naturally to our writing. If I write about, if I'm in the legal fraternity, for example, and I write about the decision of the High Court to overturn the judgment, for example. Now, I've converted the verb decide into decision. And what happens is, again, when you do that, like in the previous example, when we make subjects obscure and abstract, we add words into the sentence. So this is, thanks, Cindy. I'm glad that was helpful. This is another way in which inadvertently and unintentionally we add extra words into our sentences. We clutter sentences unnecessarily with words when we either make our subjects obscure and abstract, or when we nominalize verbs as it's been done there into the noun form of that action or that specific activity. Okay, right. Thank you for that feedback there, Cindy. Felicia says, I'm constantly told that I have run-on sentences in my essays. I'm not sure how I can deal with these. Okay, so there's probably a couple of thoughts there, Felicia. Writing is not a running commentary. So remember that you will go through your research, you will follow a certain journey. In your writing, you're not narrating that journey. You're telling the story of a scientific method, right? So in your methodology section, you describe the process you're going through. That is the strict storyline that you're telling. You're not telling the story of what you did as a researcher. You are reconstructing that method from the beginning to the end for your examiner. And in essays, just to pick up on what you're talking about here, I think you might be doing a little bit of narration as opposed to reconstruction in the proper form and to answer the specific question that the essay is asking. And in fiction, you can get away with what you are being called there as run-on sentences, because you actually are building suspension and tension through the anticipation of some sort of outcome or result from page to page and chapter to chapter. And that is the writing technique of fiction. But the writing technique of academics is to be very much more structured and scientific in what it is that you're communicating. And if you are writing run-on sentences, then it's kind of like going down a water slide. There's no conclusion, as we've spoken about. There's no structure and logical moving of your reader from one thought and topic to the next. And just you look at the next few thoughts and topics that I'll go through, and Felicia, it'll help you as well. Great to have Gerald from University of Johannesburg. Welcome, Gerald. Good to have you with us here as well. Kapana, when you use simple or clear English, your writing becomes boring. Kapana. So that's exactly what I was saying just now. We're not writing fiction. We're not writing work. Our writing is not meant to create suspense. I always say, an abstract is not. It's not a murder mystery. You actually tell. Somebody should be able to read your abstract and then they don't have to read your final report. And that's quite a tragedy for us, because we put all our effort into that final report. We want people to read. And like we said just now, we write run-on sentences because we actually want to keep people going through, our writing. In fact, the less people have to read of our writing, the better the job we've done as a researcher. If they want more information, then they can go into it and they can understand your method. And why are they reading your method? This is very important, because they want that you've created results and findings from your academic method that is generalizable, okay? So they want to be able to repeat your method. So they read your method for their research, not because they want to read a suspense novel. So academic writing, look, I think there is certainly a way that you should write that has some impact on the reader, but it should be boring in the sense that you're conveying material in a structured, clear, and meaningful way. If people want to get excitement, they'll read fiction, they'll read novels, they'll read suspense. That's not the role of academic writing. So, Kupano, I don't think it's bad to have boring writing, and I think it's good to use simple and clear English. That just be my thoughts on that one. And then Adolf says this order is crucial: precise, clear, and brief. Yeah, be brief, be clear, be gone. And talk about that in the course quite a little bit. So you'll enjoy the course, Adolf, because there's a little bit of that in there as well. Okay, Carabello from University of Pretoria, fantastic to have you on board. Hope this is being useful for everybody. Okay, So here's sort of what we were talking about just now, and here's a couple more examples of how we take verbs and then we nominalize them. So decide becomes decision, fail becomes failure, resist, resistance, precise, precision, frequent, frequency, intelligent, intelligence, okay? We must always go back to the original form of the action and put it in the verb form. We must always go back to the most clear and concise and concrete form of the subject, that is the main character or doing thing, person, place in the sentence that we're writing. Right, now, old before new, so this is the third of the 4 key practices that we're learning. This is very important. Vera says, thanks for all the tips so far. It's a real pleasure, Vera. And listen, I mean, Vera, when you go into the courses that I make available to you now, you know, you'll get the full set of material and lessons that you can go through and always have access to once you've enrolled in the courses. All I ask is that you do just write a review and leave a rating on the course so that it can reach a wider audience. But let's look at your point here. I struggle with knowing how much detail to include, especially for methods and so on. I either include too much or little. 100%, Vera. Now, that's not quite a writing problem. It's a it's more regarding the overall structure and content and nature of the problem that you're trying to solve with your research. And Vera, what I teach in another of my courses about how to pass your thesis is that we don't make enough use of appendices. And appendices are a very powerful mechanism for putting more detail in that would otherwise obscure the flow of your writing. So it does become a writing problem if you put detail in that isn't natural on the story that you're telling. And as we said just now, you know, relaying a scientific method and reconstructing it for somebody else to do is maybe, look, it's going to be boring unless that person is in that field and excited and passionate about that topic and want to read your report because of that. But if we talk about just from a faculty independent perspective, when it comes to things like methods and literature review, you know, experiment with putting more detail into your appendices. And whatever it is that you're writing, any project or thesis or assignment, there is a mechanism of appendices. And then in your writing, you just, whatever your referencing format is, you refer to that appendix. Now, very interestingly, when I got my final report back from my overseas external examiner, they remarked on my use of appendices, and they indicated that I put some detail in there that I could actually bring back into the main body of the report. So Vera, you probably want to always err on the side of putting detail into appendices. And then once you've got something and you step back at it and you read it objectively, you then look at maybe bringing some of the detail of the appendices back into the flow of the writing. Because we tend to want to impress the reader by how much we've done and all the work that we've completed and all the detail that we're able to include in what we're submitting, but actually sometimes it obstructs the writing. So hopefully that helps there. And it is a balance ultimately as to how much or how too much or too little that you include in the main flow of your writing. And appendices, I think, is a very powerful way of dealing with it. Okay, let's then teach this principle here of old before new very simply. And a couple of the questions that we've had today, I think, can be answered, and you will get a lot of value from applying this technique. Paragraphs flow better when you start sentences with information that is already familiar to the reader. Okay, so I've got 2 sentences there. So in A, you start with the topic, you go through, and you end on a certain topic, okay? But then the second sentence starts with a brand new topic. Now, what happens with the reader that's reading here? Subconsciously, by the middle of the second sentence, you've bombarded them with 3 pieces of information. And we mentioned this earlier when we would talk about just having many conclusions all the way through your writing. Help your reader and reinforce concepts that you've already given them, and give them less work to do by rearranging your sentences so that in B, you rather start with the repetition of the topic at the end of sentence A and then lead up into that new topic with the indicated by the red box there at the end of the second sentence. So what's happening is there, the reader is able to get through more of your writing with less subconscious effort. Now, if you can imagine, just for 2 sentences, if you were to bombard the reader with new information at the beginning of every single sentence for your whole final report, they are going to be exhausted, because anybody needs reinforcement. Everybody needs time to relax and time to think and time to conclude, including your readers. And if you want to write with clarity and meaning, you have to write with your reader in mind, and that's what this old before new principle does. So try and start sentences with information that is already familiar to the reader. And when you edit and look back on your own writing, look at your sentences using this technique and see where you can swap beginnings and ends of sentences around. And when I grasp this technique and when I've used it in my writing, it has flown better, because when you finish a sentence and you start the next sentence, you're reinforcing that topic, and there's a lead, there's a link, there's a bridge between the end of that first sentence and the beginning of that second sentence. And then complexity last. There was a question earlier about the comment was that you write too scientifically, and that's possibly something you can fix by using this method here. The newest, most complex information goes last. This principle is particularly important in 3 contexts. So we're talking about scientific writing when you introduce a technical term, and most of us in most faculties, we are writing about technical terms. There's jargon that's specific to a certain area. And you need to think about when you introduce those technical terms. And this is something that you maybe haven't actually explicitly thought about. But when you write, try and introduce new technical terms that the reader has not yet been explicitly introduced to in your writing at the end of your sentences. Obviously, it's going to have to come somewhere in your writing, because you need to start conveying these to the reader to take them on your journey. But whether you put them at the beginning or the end of a sentence makes a dramatic difference to the flow of your writing, the coherence and the level of meaning with which you can write. And then the second bullet point, importantly there, if you're presenting a unit of information that is long and complex, so whether it's chemical engineering or medicine or maths or physics, most areas are going to have some sort of units of information, some sort of level of complexity. Some is going to be more than others, but try and put that at the end of the sentence. And then when you introduce a concept that you intend to develop in what follows, once again, this combines with the previous principle of old before new. Make sure that you introduce a technical term by building up to it, and then you're going to develop on with that technical term in the sentences that follow. So complexity last will help reduce this perception that you're writing too scientifically. And it may be that you don't have to scrap the writing that you've done. You just have to rearrange where topics and pieces of information occur in your sentences, in what sequence you bring them in sentences, and how you reinforce them at what stages in your writing. So, what can be quite demotivating for students is to have a lot of red pen all over their writing and told that it's too scientific, or they have run-on sentences, for example. But then what are the tools and tricks and techniques to go and change that writing? And very often we think, well, you have to start again. And that's terrible, because then you go back to a blank sheet of paper and you've lost the motivation. Take what you've got, just rearrange, reorder the topics in your sentences in the way that I've taught you this afternoon. Good day, I need some advice. How can I improve my writing skills? If currently my writing skills fall under the boring, simple English level, do I read more books and write more? Absolutely, always read more books and write more. And again, it was sort of what we were talking about earlier. Boring and simple English is going to convey meaning much better than sort of complex, academic, obstructed, cluttered, long sentences. It is. There's absolutely no question about it. The trap that we fall into is that we often read, journals and academic writing, and we see what we think is complex writing. And we see, much more senior researchers and professors, etc., writing and things in ways that we can't understand. There's often just the content that they're writing about that we perceive as being too technical and scientific, and therefore their writing is complex. But if we were familiar with their content, we would probably see that their sentence construction is also simple, plain, and boring. You know, and anybody, I think, can be criticized for choosing words that are more technical or difficult, whereas we should always be choosing words that are the simplest version. And I skipped on this quote earlier, but it's a very good quote, just to touch on over here quickly. And Mark Twain says, "I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead." And what he's saying here is that it actually takes more work to convey the same amount of meaning in fewer words and clearer, more concise writing. So we think that we have to write a lot, and we have to write with long sentences and complex, difficult words. Now, that might be the first version of your writing, but your second, third, fourth, fifth versions must actually get shorter, more concise, more clearer, and with, as we've learned now, a rearrangement of where you put the topics in the sentences. And as we answered to the question just now in the webinar, some of that content-dense scientific, technical information going into appendices. And how's it to Darren? Darren, so good to hear from you, bud. Darren Belanco, one of the greatest internet marketers. If you guys need websites or support or digital marketing expertise, please do get in touch with Darren. Darren has helped me with my websites and my digital marketing over many years. So Darren says there, "Thanks for the tips, Peter. I've always found it difficult to write about very technical topics. I think this will be very helpful." Okay, guys, so fantastic, Darren. Appreciate that. And guys, I'm going to give you access into my courses just now so you can go and get all the information at your leisure and always have access to it as well. Red pen is really demotivating. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And there are a couple of good books out there that'll help you. So just, other sources that you can go and look at to help polish up and sort of finalize your writing to give it that clarity and meaning before you hand it in. The Economist, very amazing. They write about very difficult terms, but if you read their sentences, follows all the principles that we've been talking about today. And they publish a style guide as well. And that's actually a very thin book, amazingly. You should just always have a copy of that handy. So as we've spoken about sentence length, the choice of words, are you concise in your writing? Is your grammar clear? Your spelling correct? Your punctuation? And then convention. So the seventh point there, you are going to have different conventions for different faculties. So just be aware of those. And a good tip for you guys is if you have supervisors and you're writing research reports, go and read their PhD, go and read their journal articles that they have submitted, and you'll see their style of writing, the conventions that they use. And, certainly it will help you to write in a way that if they're reading your writing, that they are familiar with it already, because it's the style and approach that they use to write as well. Okay, great, guys. So don't know if there's any more questions, but I think we can all relate to how theses are written in blood, sweat, tears, and lots of coffee sitting late at night. And I think we've seen today just how sometimes this can cause a real struggle in our lives and a lot of demotivation coming through there. So guys, this is the course that really sort of has done very well, and got over 1,000 students there now with 190 ratings, and you can see some of the social proof there of other students that have done the course. And I'm just really thrilled to be able to make that available to you all today for free. So I'm going to pop the link into the chat, and that'll be available for you to enroll with absolutely zero cost to yourself for the next 3 days. And once you've enrolled in there, you'll always have access to that content. There's engaging lessons in there. There's a couple of whiteboard lessons in there. There's a couple of activities. I reinforce what you've learned today so that you can go back to it and in your own time, go through that and apply that to your own writing. And of course, the recording for today is always going to be available in the same link as you used to get onto the session today. Okay, so a couple of comments there from other students. Wow, amazing course, highly recommended, excellent, eye-opener, divine. So thank you very much for all of that there. And then really, the course is broken up into 2 main sections, just to show you what you're going to get. We start off with principles, and I talked there about writing and thinking. We mentioned that just now. And then also, writing early versus writing late, the golden thread principle. And I explained there how you take a reader on a journey drafting a research report. We touched on a couple of those today as well. Abstract patterns. We spoke about how you need to tell your reader up front in the abstract what they're even going to get before they go into the final report. You should be able to read that abstract and not actually have to read the final report, which is a bit galling for all of us that have put so much effort into those final reports. You don't keep academic readers in suspense. So there's principles there for you to go through in the course. And then the practices, some of which we've touched today already: old before new, complexity last, making sure your actions and verbs are not nominalized, and then this idea of abstract subjects. And then I give you a couple of ideas in terms of the level of complexity that you should bring in. And I think that's something that we were talking about, in this webinar. I've seen a couple of questions, just people trying to assess, how complex should I make my writing? So, there's a lesson in that course there for you to get some assistance with that topic. And then, as I mentioned, the 6 steps to student success masterclass really goes sort of quite comprehensively through a series of steps that you need to take as a student to be successful. And at the very basic level, number 1 there, related to what we're talking about today, is to develop a habit of reading, thinking, and writing. So there's a relationship between all of those 3. And in that course, I teach you how to do that, give you some exercises, so you can see there just everything that one would expect to associate with somebody who has a good habit of reading, thinking, and writing. And that's almost foundational. If you don't get that reading, writing, and thinking habit in place, you are going to struggle as a student. So Jolene, thank you. Absolute pleasure. And I absolutely do offer my time. Best place to find me is in the Facebook group. So pop into the Facebook group and you can just pop me a DM, and then we can hop onto a call. And I don't charge for those. It keeps me relevant. It keeps me, very much aware of what issues you guys are facing. So I put the link there to the Facebook group. And we're going to talk a little bit just now about what's happening in the Facebook group and the mentors that we've got set up in there, which is really, really, really exciting. So the Student Success Masterclass, 6 steps to complete your degree. We launched that in one of these webinars in February. So also done very well. You can see there one of the highest rated courses on that topic on the platform. And Chanel indicating their course was phenomenal, content high quality and practical, a lot of value in working through it. And more importantly, guys, what I want you to get is the same benefit that Chantal has achieved there, is to get confident and excited about your academic journey. And writing is, as I've explained to you now, it's foundational, it's a part of it, it's not everything. There are other things that need to go into that. And what I've attempted to do with the Student Success Masterclass is look back on my own journey of doing an undergraduate degree, a master's, and then a PhD, and really pick out the 6 big things that you need to learn and that you need to get right to be a successful student. So that is there and available for you, and also thrilled to be able to make that available for free today. All that I ask is that you guys do leave ratings and reviews on all my courses and all my videos and ebooks and all the other content that you get value from. Absolutely critical for students to give that social proof and value, as well as the feedback as to where we can improve. Okay, just quickly, Given's question there on paraphrasing tools for better sentence formation. You might be talking about things like Grammarly and other tools. Yeah, look, there is definitely a place for them. And, I've heard mixed views about people that use them, and sometimes getting to use the tool, I don't think it'll ever replace your basic knowledge of being able to structure your writing in the right way. It might just speed it up, but I think you need to get the basics. You need to go through the course that I've given you. And I actually do talk about Grammarly in the course. And then you can use that tool a lot more powerfully, maybe just to speed up, because you still have to make a choice about how you change your writing. It's not going to do it for you. And that's good, because we don't want machines to replace researchers just yet. Okay, Nicola, thank you. Looking forward to taking the course. Fantastic. Appreciate the feedback. Looking forward to seeing your feedback on the course. Looking forward to seeing your rating and review. And, you can also ask me questions inside the course. I'm always available. You can introduce yourself to the other students in both the courses. So please do go through it. If you take action, you'll be able to change the way you study. You'll be able to change your level of confidence. You'll be able to reduce the amount of stress that you have in your life, and you'll be able to, succeed with a greater level of confidence. And we don't want you dropping out. We don't want you struggling through your academic journey. That's exactly what we're all about here at the Student Success Coach, is to get you through your degrees, to keep you focused, to keep you motivated. And one of the fantastic things that we've got available at the moment is the podcast. So every week I release interviews with students and academic leaders just to inspire you and show you the way, and give you their stories so that you can learn from them. And this is, as I promised, just a little bit of what's happening in our group at the moment. So Cara got her actual certificate, and she shared her graduate gowns. So we celebrated with Cara in the Facebook group. And then Fleur also put just a fantastic sort of little word cloud there in the form of a brain. Just a little post to show his support to his fellow graduate students. Even though our brain looks like this sometimes, we can do this. So thanks, Fleur and Cara, for your posts in the Facebook group. Really just wonderful to see the success that our students are achieving and the benefit they're getting from courses and content like this. And as Moretlo asks, can I watch this at a later stage? Absolutely, yes, you can. The link is there. And in the Facebook group, what I do is once I've added all the new members that join us in each of the webinars, I then put the recording, I share my slides. All my slides are in there. Links to any references and material that we've spoken about. There's a couple of books that I've referenced today. You'll have seen those on some of the slides. I'll put links to those books in there as well, so that you can, get absolutely everything that you need to right inside the Facebook group. That's the best place really to come in to experience and get the most amount of value from everything that we make available on the Student Success Coach. And of course, there's a mailing list. So I want to put the link in the chat there. You can go and sign up there, and I do, make my courses and content and updates and sort of newsletters available through the mailing list. It would be really great if you can pass me your email address there, so I've got your details. And then very importantly, just looking ahead to next week's session, inside the Facebook group, once again, we've got a mentorship program running, and we've got 6 mentors. We'll talk about that just now, but I'm really asking for more and more mentors to join us. We have so many people. I get a lot of people asking for mentorship. I can do sort of 30 minutes for free with a couple of people a week, but I can't. We need more mentors to sign up and to help. If you've been successful in your journey, it's probably because other people helped you along the way. So I really would, those of you that have signed up and joined the members only Facebook group, please consider becoming a mentor as well. There's a button that you can click inside the Facebook group. There's all those questions that are answered for you as to exactly how it works. We had Cara on a previous webinar. She was our first mentor, and she sort of got the mentorship program going in the Facebook group. And I'm just absolutely thrilled to see that we've got 6 mentors, signed up in the group that are willing to put themselves out there, make their time available, give back to other people. We've interviewed Wendy Levita a couple of weeks ago. We've had Cara Demura, Louise there. She actually offers academic writing services. So if you need proofreading, if you need academic editing, help with referencing, they are much more expert in these topics. And, together with everybody else in the group, you've really got access to some incredible people and resources that you should take advantage of. So well done to our mentors that have signed up. And next week, I'm absolutely thrilled to mention that we've got Clive Batkow. I'll be interviewing him about his journey. He's been a phenomenal South African business leader, and he has a passion for mentorship. And we're going to talk about, and those of you that are mentors and keen to become mentors and give back to South Africa in general, to give back to South Africa, and certainly students that are trying to get knowledge and make a contribution, they need mentors, they need encouragement, they need you. And the Student Success Coach creates that platform within which you can give back to other students and just acknowledge that someone was there to help you along the way. And I'm pleading with you, if you would like to give back, sign up into the group and then sign up to become a mentor and attend next week's session, because there you'll learn from one of the best mentors in South Africa, Clive Batkow, with just decades and decades of experience in business and studies and many other aspects of life, where I think you'll be able to really be inspired and understand more about mentorship. So, Kobedi, thanks very much for mentioning there that the session was useful. Absolutely wonderful to have you in the session today. Really do appreciate that. And I'm just going to make sure that you've got all the links available in the chat. But as I said, once again, it'll also be available in the Facebook group. So also to Nomviwe, thank you so much, very helpful. just reading these comments because we do record this for the podcast as well, and in case people can't see what's on the screen. Mabuza, thank you. We appreciate your good work. Absolutely only a pleasure. And Naledi says, thank you. I needed to learn this. Absolute pleasure, Naledi. I'm just thrilled that the universities are sending these webinars through every week, and then students jump into whichever ones they find useful. You guys have got lectures and tests happening as well, but where you are able to join us 12 to 1 o'clock every Friday afternoon, I'll coach you on topics. We'll make content available to you, mostly for free. We'll have experts and leaders available for you to ask questions. If I think about some of the sessions that we've had already this year, what you would pay to get access to those people and those insights would be a lot of money. So we're here to help you get through, to get your success to the right level. Delight says, thank you, indeed, an academic skills sharpener. Delight, it was my own also mistakes and lessons learned along the way that I developed this material, and I put it into the course, which I've made available to you and which we've touched on at sort of a higher level in the session this afternoon. Okay, so Lois, much appreciated. Real pleasure there. If Uoma says, please can I get the details of the editor? Let me just jump back to that slide there quickly. So Louise Coiler there, I'm just going to take your comment off the screen. Louise there, bottom in the middle, next to Cara, on the left of Cara. If you come into the Facebook group and you search for Louise, she's actually got an academic editing Facebook page that you can hop onto. And there is also the interview with her, the webinar that we had earlier in this year, where we talk about the services that she offers. So in that webinar, she actually gave away a group coaching session. I think we offered it to 12 people that had to quickly sign up with a certain hashtag. So she's very supportive. And as you can see there, she's actually one of the mentors in the group. So there is her details there, Louise Coiler. You can actually search for her. You can find her in our members only Facebook group as well. And I'm sure that she'll be able to help you. So do take advantage of the resources that you get in the Facebook group to help you be successful. Okay, let's end off then with Felicia's comments. Really just so fulfilling to myself. It makes it all worthwhile. The hard work that we put in is great to see the feedback there and the social proof on these live sessions. Felicia, I got so much value from this webinar. Fantastic. Well, fantastic. That's great. I'm pleased. I'm glad you're pleased. And most important, I want you to take action. So what the slide says there, take action. Whatever you're writing this week, whatever it is that you need to submit, next week or the following week, whatever paragraph or sentence you've been struggling with, see if you can take some of the techniques and tips and tricks that you learned in this session, move things around in a sentence, make different choices of words, make sure your subjects and your verbs are in the clearest form. Academic writing doesn't have to be full of suspense and intrigue. That's for fiction. We have to be almost a little bit boring, plain, simple, clear, unambiguous, meaningful writers. And Silindile, I wasn't aware that this is a weekly thing. Even better. Thank you. Looking forward to it. So Silindile, hop into the Facebook group because you'll see all the events there. And when you come into the Facebook group, you can give me your details. If I've got your email address, then you'll pick up those sessions and get everything that you absolutely need. So thanks, guys. Appreciate you joining today, and I'll see you in the Facebook group later this afternoon, where I'll pop all the details there for you to get access to. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.